Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today, episode 3 of Shogun. Tomorrow is tomorrow. I am back again with Josh, who is my wonderful co-host
Co-host.
for this show that we are covering. We will link below episode 2, which will be on his channel, and that's where you can find it. And I just want to jump right into this and get started with the episode because, man, like after episode 2, we get this starting point with relocation plans. Toranaga kind of announces like, oh, for safety concerns, we have to take the pilot, Anjin, Blackthorn, and Lady Kiri, and we're sending them back to Edo. We're leaving Osaka. And this was just, it was a really great kickoff to this episode. I wanted to ask you right off the bat, how did you enjoy the healing of Blackthorn by the wizard?
Oh goodness. Look, first off, once again, it's, we keep talking about East meets West. I don't know how you could interpret it any differently.
I think
he's
it is
sitting there
pretty
like,
fair.
yes.
Yeah.
He's bleeding me to get the filth out of my blood. And Mariko is like, huh? No, he's cleaning your wound.
No,
like,
sir,
what?
I can assure you he is a doctor.
Yeah. No, he's a doctor. Like, we're good. And and the guy keeps like, oh my God, he's so tense. Like, he needs to just chill. Like, are we sure we don't need to just get him laid? Like,
yeah.
and then Blackthorn is like,
Yeah. How dare
how
they?
scandalous.
Yes. Yeah, I think there's a way that they're playing this East meets West, how it's done.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that they're not doing it in a way that is just kind of like schmuck bait, you know what I mean? Like it's done respectfully, but in a way that there's also undercurrents of humor there. Because you don't want it to be slapstick, you don't want it to be just kind of like a goofball energy, but it's endearing, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. It's funny, but it's like sweetly funny where it's like, hey, we can look at each other's differences and misunderstandings and not like get bent out of shape about it.
I think what does it for me is that it's a very sincere representation, for this culture clash. Whether you want to call it East meets West, whether you want to call it culture clash, whatever you want to label it as, the fact is Blackthorn has this set of beliefs and ideals that are like, hey, when you're sick, you must bleed out the filthy blood, which, okay, yeah, you're right. You'll get rid of the infection that way. He comes from a place in which these are tried and true scientific methods.
Yeah.
He goes to Japan. Japan has their own set of tried and true scientific methods. The two do not overlap at all.
Well, I mean, I want to say at this point, it's possible that there is some validity to the Japanese looking at him and being like, yeah, he is a barbarian. Because like he's coming out with these like, to us, like outdated methods where it's like, why would you do that? And here's a doctor who's is he trying to like stitch him back up or clean the wound? And he's like, get away from me, wizard. It's great. Like, it's so funny. And I have to like say that the actor that's playing Blackthorn this episode, like, oh man, like I was in stitches. I laughed so hard multiple times.
Agreed. I liked it a lot. I also, Mariko was another standout in this scene for me because she was so understanding, but you could see the confusion on her face. Like, no, he's a doctor. You're good. Like,
yeah.
I don't know this word warlock, but I can assure you he knows what he's doing.
It almost, to a point, it almost feels like she's treating him like a child, like who's just being stubborn, like, okay, sure, like gentle parenting him, like, okay, like, well, Like the last episode, he's throwing a temper tantrum because he doesn't want to take another bath. And he's like, 2 baths in 1 week? What am I? Like, what about the flux? Are you trying to give me the flux? And she's just like, he doesn't want to take a bath for some reason. So, like, I guess we can go. But it's really endearing. I think it's a really fun, like it's clever. The humor there, it's intelligent humor. Like it's silly, but it's
Yeah.
fun. It's endearing. I love it. I want to move ahead though to this swap ruse.
There's a scene where Toranaga speaks with Yabashige.
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. You're
says-
right. You're right.
And so Yabashige is basically summoned to meet with Toranaga. He comes to the door. They say, you know, surrender your katana. He says, all right, cool. And he's resigned himself to death. He's like, my day has come. You know, I've been lucky one too many times, and Toranaga is going to, you know, execute me. And he shows up, and he and Toranaga have this exchange where, once again, you know, we've got this reoccurring theme of someone playing their true card. And Yabashige basically straight up says, like, look, I'm ready to die, man. You're going to kill me. Just kill me. And Toranaga says, I thought you were my friend. Like,
Are
why
you not
would I
my
do
friend?
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he basically just says, look, what do you want? Why are you doing? Why are you, you know, why are you taking money? What is it that you're hoping to gain? Because I can see that you want. And Yabashige says, I want this, you know, this neighboring province. I want a bigger fief. Like, I don't want to rule on high. I want to be a big fish in a little pond, essentially. And Toranaga basically says,
Deal.
cool, please stop betraying me and you can have that.
Right. Look, Yabashige, we talked about this in the episode that we recorded on your channel. There's something about this guy that I find like immediately fascinating. And that first episode, you know, he's like boiling people alive and like, you know, like he's a bit of a weirdo, but like as the time goes on, you understand that he can be bought. Like he really is. In a way, he might be more easy to understand than some of the other in the 5 regions because his desires are somewhat simple in terms of like monetary gain. Where like others, it's like, is it religion? Is it, you know, like what do they want to be leader of all? Like this guy, he wants to kind of just have a chill, you know, setup and wear his feather vests and look awesome. Like,
yes.
I said this on Twitter the other day. I was like, look, I can't stay mad at a man in such a fashionable feather vest. Like, those are the rules.
You know, with this exchange comes a very interesting turn to his character as well. Because you could easily dismiss him as just some skeezy little ambitious guy. And Toranaga looks at him and says, what did they offer you? And he says, they offered me your seat at the council. And Toranaga's like, do you want it? And he went, no.
I mean, to him, that would probably be a punishment. He would have to work.
Right?
Like,
and you get the sense that, wait a minute, he doesn't really have a choice. If Ishido is coming to you saying, you need to do something for me, like, what are you supposed to do? Just refuse and then get murdered? Like, you almost get a sense that it's not necessarily like some sort of ambition driving, though he does have that.
Yeah.
But there's also self-preservation involved.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. And I think Yabashige is the type of man where in that environment, he knows, look, he's crafty too. Like he's not, you know, he's not a simpleton, but in this environment, he can't really be like, no, because Toranaga is essentially just a captive in the castle right now, waiting for his last day. So like it would make sense for Yabashige to be like, okay, like his time's up. I gotta do what I have to do to stay on someone's good side, because after Toranaga's gone, what are they going to do with him?
In this sense, I kind of get the feeling that Yabashige is he's playing a balancing act, right? He's trying his hardest to help without helping too much, but also trying to help without helping too much, which is the title of, you know, episode 2, Servant of Two Masters. And I feel like in this exchange, Toranaga sort of shores that up and says, "Hey, let's do this thing. Like for once and for all, please. I'll give you what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Please just help me out." And that's when he charges them to be his armed escort as he evacuates Blackthorn and Mariko and the lady Kimi no Katana. Is that her
Kiri,
name?
is it Lady Kiri?
Lady
Or is
Kiri.
it well, yeah, let's talk about the
Yeah,
swap.
the switcheroo, which becomes the switcheroo, which I love.
It's so good. It's so good. When I was watching the episode, I had to rewind it when that happened because out of the corner of my eye, I was focusing on something and then I saw someone like movement off to the side and
Yeah.
I pressed rewind and then like you see that there's this switch where she's in the carriage and then the pregnant woman feigns like being in pain. She kind of like drops to her knees and all of the retainers for
Ishido or
Ishido. Is it Ishido's retainers or is it I think so. They come in and they're like, "Hey, we need to make sure everything's kosher here. Nobody can just like up and
yes.
leave." And
Yeah, it is.
so
It is. So yeah.
okay. So that happens, and like the camera ever so slightly cuts to Blackthorn, and he's just got this like slight smirk on his face. And he's kind of like, okay, like just like, and then he like looks down, and
Well, and
it's
here's the
so
clincher though.
good.
The clincher though is Ishido himself comes and looks into the cart and sees Lady Kiri or whoever it was, sees the lady in there and is like, and then Toranaga's right hand man, we should really look up his name, comes over and is like, "Oh, I'm sure this is just a mistake. Lord Ishido is just wishing to say goodbye," and is being polite, and the political maneuvering is there. And
Hiromatsu. Hiromatsu.
yeah, that's him. Good job. You're awesome. But he opens up the litter and sees she's in there. And she was like, "Oh, hi. See you later. Bye-bye."
Hmm.
Then the lady in waiting or whatever she is has her pain and she
Yeah.
makes a big scene. And you see someone bolting for the bushes and you're like,
Yeah, it's just like the like net of the hat. Like you just kind of see like a head
yeah,
like, and then
it's
they're
a
gone.
it's a it's a second. Which again, what I said in episode 1, this is not casual watch. You must
No.
be invested.
Yeah, it was really nice, and it's showing again like we're seeing this clever, like very like wily side of Toranaga that he's put this whole thing together. And not only is he trying to get Blackthorn out of there, but he needs to get out too. Like he's pretty much been a captive there at Osaka Castle, and like things are just not good for him. And so this is like his chance. I think last episode the stakes were pretty high and he's like, "All right, like I'm done." Like he's showing
Yes.
some real fortitude in this episode where it's like, "All right, I'm out of here. We're making plans. I'm looking to the future." And also the title of this episode, Tomorrow is Tomorrow, kind of meaning like everything, like you never know. Like you never
Yeah,
know what could happen.
exactly. I loved, like you were saying before, and I did interrupt on that point earlier, so I'm sorry for that.
You're fine. You're
But
fine.
I love that Blackthorn noticed and immediately looks at Mariko, and she's just like, "What? Nothing happened."
Mhm.
And he's like, "So what happens if Ishido finds out about this? Nothing that just happened." She's like, "Oh, we'll all die." And he's like, "Cool.
Yeah.
That's not okay." Well, they come to the gate, and
Act
then the
2.
gatekeeper's like, "I need to verify every single person." And Yabushige's like, "Oh my god, Ishido himself just said we could go." And the guy's like, "I don't really care. I'm gonna look at every single person." Oh, to which Blackthorn, again, one of those like almost superhuman instincts, starts throwing a fit.
Like a
It's
literal
improper to
tantrum.
look inside on a lady.
Yeah.
A lady's virtue is her holy virtue. You can't, and it's like these really overinflated speeches.
It's so good. Like I mean, that's the thing. Like this show isn't a comedy, but like I haven't laughed like that in so long, where I was just like I was cackling. And I mean, they go to open up that little chest and he's like slamming it back down and he's like interjecting and he's like, "You are a silly man with the hair of a pony." And I'm just like, it's like who wrote this? It's so good. And then like the actor that plays Blackthorn, like he just like he sold it.
He's
Like this
so
was
good.
such a
So good.
performance. I yeah, I haven't laughed like that in a long time. But besides like it just being entertaining, like this next part that we move up to, like this whole skirmish and attack in the forest, like again, like it just gets better because a lot of the times I feel like when I'm watching TV and we have a battle sequence, things look like 2024, like a lot of the times battles start to look a little like superhero-y, like
Yeah,
I don't want
yeah.
to see like a punch get thrown and then like somebody's like flying off and like the camera cuts before like someone makes impact. I don't want to see it anymore. It's just I'm
Right.
tired of it. And I really love how they shot this whole sequence in the forest. I thought that it was really nice to seeing Blackthorn, like he's ushering the women out of danger. And then Mariko is like, no, no, sir. And like she picks
They
up a
need
weapon. And then, like, we have this really cool moment where they're fighting almost back to back. And it feels like they've come so far, right? Because in the beginning, she's like, he's a
yeah.
barbarian, stinky man, enemy to my religion. And now here they are in the forest fighting back to back with one another.
Yeah. It, it
Yeah.
it has the feel of an epic without sort of the pomp of an
Yeah.
epic, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I really loved, once again, Mariko as a standout character here, when she went and grabbed a weapon, she picked up a naginata, which is traditionally a weapon of a woman in Japan. That is the weapon that a woman traditionally is trained in. So when she picked that up and she started just like
Well,
taking
yeah.
dudes out, I was like, oh, hell yeah, that's awesome.
It makes total sense though. I mean, like I'm like 5'3" on a good day. Like I don't have reach. You know what I mean? Like if I
Yeah,
came at someone with a sword, like it would be game over for me. So that I
yeah,
mean it just makes total sense. And as I was watching it, I was like, of course that's what she would pick up. Like, of course. It would be
exactly.
stupid for her to grab anything else. And I love how like effortless she looks. And then Blackthorn, I mean, he's just kind of like holding on for dear life. Like he doesn't really know what he's doing, but it was
Yeah.
great.
I loved because for me, like, okay, I knew something was up when they did the swap. I was like, oh, okay. But when Toranaga popped out of the litter, I was like, I should have seen. Why didn't I see that coming? And he's fully armored up, and he's like, let's get out of here. And it blew my mind because this sequence, so you have the gate, you have the forest skirmish, in which and then you have the following sequence that just shows how terrified of Toranaga these guys are. They
Yeah.
really fear his power. They really fear how smart he is. And it's illustrated very wonderfully by the great lengths that they're willing to go to stop him from leaving. Even though they've visually inspected every single person, they want to make sure he is not leaving that castle. And they
Right.
go to extreme lengths to make sure that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. I think
When
go ahead.
I was just going to say, when they realize he's down there, they're just like, well, it's time for him to die then. Like, he's going to
Yeah.
die with everybody else. And it's not going to be on us because he should have been back at the castle. We're good.
So one of the things that I want to move ahead to is like we get to the docks, right? And then we have like Buntaro's sacrifice where
his
I
his
want
redemption.
yeah, I wanted to ask you, nobody? Do we get to see a dead body? Do you think he's dead or do you think he's hostage?
That's a good question. So it's a real beautiful sequence because they're in the forest skirmish, as you said, and Buntaro's like, "You guys get out of here. We will hold them off." Like, so he's already like, "I'm playing the sacrifice play. I'm already a dead man. Like, get out of here. We will, you know,
For the
I want you
light
to get
in
to safety."
Shinawa.
That's right.
Someone
Yes.
on my
But
Discord server said that. So.
I mean, apt comparison is apt.
Yeah.
They make it into the port. They go down to the thing, and Blackthorn's like, "Hey, I know these guys," and he's like, "Hey, let's go. You know, we got to get on those ships. We got to get on the boats."
I loved that. He's not friendless. And I mean, it makes so much sense because that whole sequence, like it was really cool in episode 1 to see him getting to like steer the ship through the storm. But I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder what this is for. And like it comes back and you're like, aha, like that's why that was needed. That's why that was
Yep.
necessary.
It's such a good callback. And of course the captain knows him, likes him. And did you notice that he now addresses him as Captain Sama?
Yes.
And he
Yes.
was saying, "Captain Sama, oh," you know,
Yes.
it shows he's picking up and learning some of those customs. And I really liked that. Subtle, something subtle, but shows growth.
Yeah, it feels like we flew through this episode. Like it feels like it was just like a whirlwind because that's
Right.
pretty much like the mid part of the episode.
Yeah. And you know, they're loading up in the boats, they're rowing out, and we see Buntaro like hauling ass down to the dock. And not just hauling ass, but he is like kicking ass too.
Yeah.
He takes out like I don't know how many dudes on his own. He's the
Yes.
only one left of that entire retainer that stayed behind to get them out of the forest. And there's this just beautiful moment where Buntaro gets all the redemption in my eyes. Like, yeah, was he cold, unfeeling, uncaring? Was he probably not the smartest dude? Yeah. But what you see in this moment is he was very loyal. And for
Yeah.
all his faults, he did have some virtues.
Yeah. I mean,
And
that seems to be the case with like I feel like a lot of these characters, and it makes in my opinion it makes someone like a Yabushiga stand out because he's just a weasel. But
right.
like uh,
But there's you know, we talk about this with Wheel of Time all the time, that characters we love the most or love to hate the most are the characters who lost,
yeah.
characters who we identify with on one page and would like to throttle on the next page.
That's true. That's true. I did really appreciate that moment, like when it cuts to Mariko and like she looks resigned, and then you see Toranaga like pay his respect, and
acknowledge him like that.
then
So
yeah,
good.
and then he's in and then Buntaro is in the building, and you're like, you don't know what happened. Like, was he killed? Is he held prisoner now? I mean, is this going to affect? Is it something that has to do with Mariko's kids down the line? Like, are they going to get in trouble or held hostage? Like, we don't know. So I feel like this will probably come back to play a part later down the road. I feel like it has to, because the way that the template of this show is working, like so far, pretty much every moment that you see feels like it has a real consequence down the line.
Right.
And they've been really effective at making sure that there's a little bit of stuff in there that could be kind of fluffy, but it feels like everything is pretty meaningful and impactful.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I wanted
I like that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wanted to talk about the escape to the black ship, because this is just, it's so cool. They're on these boats, right? They're on the Japanese boat, I think. And
Yeah.
they've come to the conclusion, like, look, those people, they're going to board us and they're going to kill us. And Blackthorn's like, not if we take that. And so I think, again, like another point for Blackthorn for being like the one who's able to think very quickly on his feet. And I think this is just, as a pilot, like this is just a natural, you know, personality trait for this man at this point. Like he just, he's always, you know, he's always thinking, and he's always kind of just like steering his own ship in a weird, you know, boat metaphor that I'm going with here. But we have this exchange when we get to the black ship, and Toranaga has to get passage on the ship, which means he has to make some type of a trade. And this got really interesting for me. He ends up giving
Yes.
them money, and I believe, what else was it? He agrees to leave Blackthorn behind.
Yes.
So the Catholics aboard were like, he's not coming with us. And Mariko has
Which is
to,
essentially a death warrant, which is
Exactly.
essentially signing his death warrant, because all the little Ishido warriors that are in little fishing boats trying to block the harbor, they're going to board the smaller ship regardless. They're not going to not.
Right. And I mean, it's like Mariko has this moment where she's telling Blackthorn like what was said, and he, like you can just tell he's like, well, what am I going to do here? And once again, like we see just his absolute unwillingness to let go and be, he's not going to die on a cross. He is
Right.
going to take matters into his own hands. And I almost feel like this was a test, another test in the eyes of Toranaga, to be like, is there a reason that I should keep this man with me? Like, he doesn't need Blackthorn to take Blackthorn's ship and take, the guns and this and that. And of course,
Right.
like this whole ship race situation, like that was cool.
Oh, so good.
That was really cool. And I don't know how they shot this. I don't know if this was, like it looked like they were really on ships in the ocean. So like however this was shot, like I just have to say like how great it was.
Wow. It looks so good.
Yeah.
It looks so good. And I have a bit of an issue with a lot of sort of maritime battles portrayed in movies and television, right? Because it's real difficult to make them engaging and historically accurate. Because you talk about some of these old battles that happened on sea, and you'll see a ship way off in the distance, and even if you point right towards them and go to them at full speed, it'll be several hours before you can even identify who it is.
Yeah.
And then if it's an enemy and they start running away from you and you start pursuing, well, now you can have pursuits that last a couple of days before a single shot is ever fired. Not very exciting.
Right.
For television. But in this particular case, they did a really great job of just, first of all, they took the sails and wind out of the equation, right? Because Blackthorn's ship had people rowing under him. He's down there. He wants
Hammering
the drums
away.
playing. He wants to row. So he's generating his speed through rowing. Now, I think the black ship had wind. I think they were sailing at this point.
It looked like it, but I am no expert.
It was not explicitly stated, so I'm going to assume that they were using the wind. So essentially you had wind sails versus rowers, and the captain of the black ship looks back to the Spaniard who is the guy steering the ship.
Rodriguez
and
is back.
And he says, yep, go ahead and turn 5 degrees. And he's like, cool, this will be funny, And then the captain says, no, go another 5 degrees. Let's really run him into the rocks. And the Spaniard's like, but we'll damage the ship. Wait a minute. I don't want to risk our neck in pursuit of this guy. The ship has to be in working condition to get back. Like, there's this real tense moment where Blackthorn and the Spaniard are both like looking at each other, not looking at each other, but looking at each other in that
they kind of are, though, in a way. Like the way that the camera pans back and forth, like I get the idea that they really are like seeing each other right now and sizing each other up, like in this really intense game of chicken where like, it's not really chicken, but it's just like, are you going to smash me or not? Like, are you going to kill me or not? And like, I'm so excited that we got more time with Rodriguez because, again, like he's hilarious. And they're like, they're hurling like insults back and forth at the same time, but still in this like almost jovial way where it's like, we're not enemies. We're just doing a little smack talking. And then like, Rodriguez is pantomiming something with the rudder or whatever it is. And like, again, like it's another situation where
being attacked by a lightsaber.
where I had talked about it doesn't seem like there's a lot of fluff in this show. So when we on our first episode talked about what was the connection between Blackthorn and Rodriguez? Why did he go back for Blackthorn's body after he was washed off the ship and, like quote unquote drowned?
Yeah.
And like again, it's like, okay, this is why, like, we need a reason for Rodriguez to not allow them to smash Blackthorn into the rocks. And like, there it is. So it was like, you saved me, I'll save you. Like, the debt is paid. So now the question is, this relationship, is that it now? It's done and over? Like,
that's a good question, honestly, because, on one hand, I want to say, yeah, like the friendship, they're even, a life for a life, eye for an eye, tooth. But on the other hand, I want to say they are still politically, they're still two opponents. And so I do think that's going to be a dynamic that plays, but I don't think we're going to see it for a while because, once they made it out of the bay, Rodriguez and the Black Ship, I mean, they're gone. They're on their way back to Portugal.
right.
And trading along the way. So it's going to be a while before we see him again.
That's the thing that they got out of the deal too. He was like, they're allowed to set sail. Yeah.
Which the captain's kind of being an idiot about this because he's like, yeah, well, I can leave anytime I want. Okay, cool. You can. But if you leave without permission, you can't come back.
Right.
That's the problem.
Your wallet is going to be hurting. Like, that's, yeah.
So Toranaga says, okay, you can leave. You'll have permission to leave, which means you'll have permission to come back. And, the captain being a capitalist.
Yes.
Also negotiates for the money that he can take with him and things like that. And they successfully get out of the bay. They, at some point, transfer Toranaga and all the people back to the Japanese ship. The Black Ship takes off, says, see you later, bye. And we go back to this show is crazy because we have this dark, tense, scary moment, and then you go right back to hilarious.
What's the hilarious part for you? Are you talking about the diving contest?
The diving.
Or the diving?
Like, yeah, it was like, teach me how to dive. And he's like, all right, cool. And he dives in. Do it again. Okay, cool. Do it again. Okay, cool. Do it again. And I was like, are they making him bathe? Like, are they messing with him right now?
I interpreted that as Toranaga. I do think he legitimately wanted to learn how to dive. But I also think that we've seen in this show, like there's with Yabushiga, like he had to climb down the rock face to go get the guy. Like you can't, you have to be the strong one in front of your people. And I kind of feel like he saw what Blackthorn did and was like, okay, so look at this tough guy. Yeah, like I really want to learn how to dive. Go ahead and dive like 500 times for me. Oh, by the way, now I want to race you. So he was tiring Blackthorn out so that they could have this race and he could still beat him. It was like clever and just kind of like a cheeky little competition. It didn't mean too much, but it was just like, I'm going to do this because why not? Like he's still showing Blackthorn his place. And despite all of that, he names him Hatamoto. Is that what it was? Where he's no longer the pilot or the barbarian. He's now like in Toranaga's inner circle and he has a right to like be at Toranaga's side. And I think this is really important going forward. And then we have that kind of like question mark over the logbook from Blackthorn, where he's like, we'll get this translated eventually, but this could take a very long time. Yes. And it kind of like wraps everything up in this really, really great episode. I loved it. Loved it. Favorite of the three.
Yeah, no, he even tells Blackthorn, he's like, I want you to train my people in your ways of war. And he tells his son in Yabashige, Toranaga tells his son in Yabashige, hey, your job is to now listen to this guy. And once again, Blackthorn is, I think it's real easy to kind of go, oh yeah, Blackthorn's kind of, he's here by himself and blah, blah, blah. And they say, and he negotiates, I want my men and my ship. Like,
yes.
And you're like, oh yeah, he's got a whole ass crew just hanging out in prison waiting for him.
I was so hoping that we would get a callback to the crew because I thought, like, what are they doing? Not like literally, are they like sitting there playing, like cards or whatever, but like, are they going to come back into the picture? And that answered the question for me. So I was like, okay, cool.
So, and again, we see Toranaga make his shift from happy to play politics, happy with the political stalemate, to making his first official sort of declaration, and where Komatsu comes in to Ishido and is like, hi, I have a message. And he's real formal about
Loved it.
And he's real, super
I love how he does
about
like the
it.
flail, like he flails his sleeves out. Like, oh, like he walked in there knowing, like,
yeah,
do what you want, but like, I got something for you.
He had the smug energy. It was, and then they were like, and then he was like, yeah, so Toranaga resigns. He's no longer one. So you guys are cool. And Ishido's like, yeah, well, we're still gonna like impeach him and kill him. And Komatsu's like, yeah, but according to how this is written, can't do anything without 5.
What do you think stopped Toranaga from resigning sooner? Do you think it was the heir?
I do. I think it was the heir. I think there was I think for Toranaga, like we were saying before, he was very happy to let people play politics and to keep it in a political stalemate until the heir was of age, who could then take control and lead the nation again, and then they wouldn't have to deal. I think not resigning sooner was him seeing the wishes of Taiko through, because he was also plotting, he was also maneuvering. The difference between him and the other regents is he was playing to stalemate, they were playing to win. And so it was in a lot of ways, it was a lot easier for him, because he knew he didn't care about being locked up in a palace. He didn't care about being a hostage, so long as they didn't make any decisions to lead the country into war.
I love some good game theory. I think that sums it up perfect. He was playing for a stalemate. They were playing to win. And that puts Toranaga in a very different like mode, it's a totally different game. And Toranaga had, up until this point, it seems like the upper hand, but they forced his hand. So now he can't be there for the heir. But I think this is going to be, like we're only 3 episodes in too. Like wild.
Well, and what else did he learn too? Keep in mind, he also learned that the Catholic Church is coming, and where he sees that 2 of the regents are already Catholic, and that they already bow to these priests who claim to have this higher authority. I really think it's kind of an interesting little progression, because we get the sense from episode 1 that he doesn't really think of Ishido as a threat. Like he respects him. He's a regent. He understands that Ishido wields a great deal of power. But Toranaga, until he starts to see a plot unfold that none of them are aware of. I think when he starts seeing that plot unfold that Blackthorn gave, that's when he went, okay, now we don't have time to wait for the heir. I need to step up and I need to make this happen now, or else we risk losing our nation.
Right. No, I think that's a good point. I wanted to ask you before we wrap it up, was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
There's just so much, honestly. The performances are great. I love that Blackthorn is starting to throw out some Japanese phrases. He's starting to throw out some Japanese courtesies. I loved Toranaga's sort of transition, which is interesting, because I think the first 3 episodes have been overall a different story for each person, right?
Yeah,
we've seen Blackthorn clawing and scraping for life the entire time, and he's transitioned from this desperado to someone who is now respected and in the court of Toranaga. For all we've seen, Toranaga happy with the political stalemate, transitioning into someone who is taking a much more proactive role in the preservation of his Japanese culture. Each person, each character in this show seems to have this similar arc. Even Buntaro we saw, you know, like I said, for the first 2 episodes, he was just a jerk. But in this 3rd episode, we got to see that he does have some virtues as well. He is very skilled at being a warrior. He is not very skilled at being a politician. And so he was used in the capacity that he was effective at. And that is a sign of really great leadership, is understanding your people's skills and abilities and utilizing them for such, which
Absolutely.
we see Toranaga do by having women as advisors because they were wise and smart and they could see his plots.
Right? Ooh, that's a good point. That's a really good point. I think the big question for me that I want to know, that I'm excited to see as this, you know, as this show goes on, is how effective Blackthorn is going to be at training Toranaga's man in the way of Western warfare. And that's going to be interesting because he's, you know, he's not a military guy, he's a pilot. So what
Yeah.
does he really know? And will this cause problems? You know, like, we don't know. But I'm going to wrap it up. I wanted to say thank you so much for joining me. And I did want to say that go over to Josh's channel because each one of these episodes will be staggered on each of our channels. So go over to his channel, subscribe so you make sure that you don't miss these episodes, and you cover a lot of other series as well, correct?
Two Geeks, One Mic has been a podcast that's been around for a number of years now. We were on hiatus for a couple of years, but we're back. And it's my brother and I, and we're doing, main focus right now is we're building cosplay, right? We're doing these leatherwork cosplays that we're starting from scratch, and we're learning. The whole point of the show is that we're learning. You know, when someone on the YouTube says, we're going to make this today, and then they go, look at it, it's perfect.
Right.
I can't do that. So we wanted to have a show where you could learn along with us, and we could show you some of the mistakes that we've made along the way, which you've noticed some discoloration here.
An authentic
That was a
look.
mistake we made.
An authentic look
So-
into cosplay.
Exactly. And then, but what we're going to do is we're starting to expand out into different movies, television series, video games, etc., etc., etc. So if you want to be there and join us for the ride, absolutely go on over there, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
All right. That wraps it up. Thanks everyone for watching. If you've got some comments, drop them in. Let us know how you like this episode. If you've got questions, if you agree, disagree, leave a comment, and we will see you back. Until then, goodbye.